Hi, my name is Rebecca Lee, and I'm a PhD student at the University of Colorado Boulder. My presentation is titled, "The Same Way to Say Different Things, Leveraging Patterns at the Syntax-Semantics Interface to Uncover Semasiological Variation." In traditional variationist studies, linguistic variants are two socially differentiated linguistic forms with the same semantic meaning, or two different ways to say the same thing. In this presentation, I examine a case of variation in semantic meaning rather than variation in form. In other words, variation in the meanings and associations connected to the same lexical item as used by different groups of people. This phenomenon is often referred to as polysemy, or alternatively, semasiological variation in cognitive sociolinguistics. In this project, I operationalize semasiological variation in the lexeme racist by measuring variation in the frequency with which different groups use a particular construction alongside it. The turning the insult construction, or person is the insult, such as you're the racist and she's the only racist. Specifically, in a corpus of tweets scraped with the search term racist, tweeters with MAGA in their user profiles, or Make America Great Again, Trump's 2016 campaign slogan, used this construction with racist much more frequently than those with Black Lives Matter in their profiles. This construction comes with particular pragmatic correlates, such as contestation of a label, here racist, and pinning the label back on the accuser. It also comes with the presupposition that there is only one person or group that fits the label in a particular discourse situation involving multiple parties. I suggest that these pragmatic correlates and presuppositions align with ideologies of folk or white racism and white fragility that have been outlined in linguistic anthropological literature, therefore connecting the use of this construction with ideological differences in the semantics of racist. Following other research at the semantics and social meaning interface, I also connect these pragmatic correlates and presuppositions to the construction of social meaning, specifically conservative and liberal figures of personhood. Semasiological variation has been understudied in variationist sociolinguistics because words are often argued to be in a conventional one-to-one mapping with their semantic meanings. However, situated ethnographic studies of meaning demonstrate that people rely on community-specific knowledge and practices when using and interpreting the meaning of words. For example, Wang discusses the meaning extension of the communist-affiliated word tangzhi as used by members of the LGBTQ community in Hong Kong. Members of this community have extended the term to refer to LGBTQ activists, distinct from its previous use as a communist address term. However, tangzhi activists retain knowledge of this previous meaning and the grammatical and pragmatic contexts it tends to be found in. One of Wang's informants commented after hearing tangzhi as an address term, that was the only time I heard people use tangzhi as an address term. We are not communists after all. In other words, using words in community-specific ways is inherently connected to community-specific ways of performing social action. Conventionality then, the hallmark of semantics, is not at odds with knowledge that is community-specific. Words can map to multiple community or register-specific meanings. A second reason that semasiological variation has been understudied in variationist sociolinguistics is because it is difficult to measure. In their study of syntactic variation between the active and passive, in which Weiner and Labov control for referential meaning, they write that theoretically, it should be possible to draw equal profit from cases where a single form is used with several meanings. But the possibility of accurate measurement is less immediate with semantic variation. Ethnography is indispensable in this area, but what about if we want to measure variation in a statistical manner? Variation in semantics must be operationalized in terms of other formal features that recur in types of contexts words are used in. In cognitive sociolinguistics, the basic assumption is that rather than identify conceptual structure, we identify the various factors of usage that are a result of the conceptual structure that speakers associate with a given form. Variation in the use of syntactic constructions and types of discourse with which a word is found are two types of factors of usage that are used to study variation in the conceptual structure associated with a word. One way in which semasiological variation differs from variation in form is that it involves a different type of markedness. With variation in form, we usually discuss how one form is unexpected with respect to another form that could have occurred in the same context. With variation in use or meaning, one syntactic or discourse context in which a form is used is unexpected and therefore marked with respect to other contexts that the same form could have occurred in. This is reflected in the meta discourse that occurs in the corpus under study. Tweeters communicate that others who use racist in particular contexts are using it in the wrong way. Thus, like marked forms, marked uses or meanings involve ideological differentiation. Two different communicators with different social vantage points, different uses of words are ideologically marked. In this case, the construction under study aligns with a particular set of ideologies or beliefs about racism. Hill outlines an ideological folk theory of white racism in which racism is only perpetrated by individual intentional actors that are remote from mainstream discourse, and positions it against critical theories of racism that engage with the ways racism is institutional, systemic, often implicitly woven into cultural and political projects, and defined by its impact on people of color. Within the folk theory, racism is approached as irrational and out of the ordinary, rather than an everyday part of US culture and institutions. So if one can root out bad individual racists, then the theory predicts that racism will be solved. Hodges terms the discursive practice of pinning racism on bad individual actors as the hunting for racists language game. The project of engaging in a binary discourse about individual moral essence, rather than focusing on the dynamic processes that uphold racist and white supremacist systems. While white people cannot be the victims of racism within critical perspectives, colorblind racism positions the phenomenon as decontextualized prejudice that white people can also experience. Charges of racism are often understood as insults within this framework and thus invoke feelings of white victimhood. In terms of positionality, it's important to note that I am a white woman and thus write on this topic from the perspective of someone who doesn't experience racism themselves. However, I place myself firmly within the critical perspective. Building on Hill and Hodges, my work aims to expose how the ideological variation I have described manifests in the syntax-semantics interface. It is specifically the ideologies associated with the folk theory of racism that are apparent in the data I present here. The data for this project consists of tweets scraped with the search term racist, spanning from December 2018 through January 2019. In a previous study, I examined the variation in adjectival constructions and semantic category of the entity or action modified by racist in 600 tweets total from two different groups of tweeters, those with Black Lives Matter in their user profiles versus MAGA. These two affiliations are ideologically opposed in that the Black Lives Matter movement fights against institutional oppression of Black people, while Trump's policies were oppressive toward Black communities in the US. In this previous analysis, MAGA tweeters were significantly associated with the use of the predicative construction, particularly predicative nominals, such as he is a racist. Furthermore, MAGA tweeters were almost exclusively affiliated with predicative nominals with the definite article, writing tweets like, "Look in the mirror, you are the racist." In this project, I further test the association between the use of this construction with racist and MAGA tweeters by searching for all uses of this construction with racist in a larger corpus of tweets beyond just the 600 from the previous study. I labeled the construction the turning the insult construction due to its pragmatic correlate of reversing insults back toward the person who originally made the insult. The pattern consists of person is the only true or real insult, here racist. I searched for it using Sketch Engine with this pattern. Other adjectives with a similar semantic valence to only true or real were also included. However, not all instances of nominal predicates with the definite article are instances of the construction. So tokens such as he is the most, least, or worst racist were not included, as were tokens with relative clauses such as this is the racist president that the left wants to show. The resulting corpus consisted of 1,243 tweets. Some examples are shown here, labeled with their affiliation with MAGA or BLM. The ones crying, shouting racist are the actual racist. Whenever someone brings up racism, it is they who are the racist. You are the racist here, dear, not Trump. You cannot face racism since you are the racist. It is important to note that this construction is used with many other insult labels in addition to racist, such as liar, idiot, and loser. The popular Reddit "Am I the asshole" is a related construct in that it poses a binary choice between two individuals within a given social context as the asshole. I draw on construction grammar and mental spaces to describe the turning the insult construction in more detail. According to Goldberg, any linguistic pattern is recognized as a construction as long as some aspect of its form or function is not strictly predictable from its component parts or from other constructions recognized to exist, or if it occurs with sufficient frequency. Furthermore, within construction grammar, constructions are form-function pairings, syntactic patterns with their own meanings and pragmatic correlates. This syntactic pattern is a construction because it has idiosyncratic communicative functions and presuppositions beyond the composition of predicatives, nominals, and the definite article. This pattern has an identificational function. It asserts that a person, typically an addressee you, fulfills a unique role associated with an insulting label within a particular discourse space. The construction presupposes that this same insulting label has been previously used, a situation which constructs the relevant discourse space with two roles associated with oppositional parties, the insulter and the person labeled or insulted. After the original insult, let's say the insulted role is filled with person A and the insulted role is filled with person B. The speech act associated with the construction then is the assignment of the role associated with the insulted, the loser or the racist, to the person who originally filled the insulter role in the presupposed prior use. The insulter is now the speaker or writer who used the turning the insult construction, which may or may not be the same as person B. The discourse space itself isn't typically explicitly named, but can be, as in for, where the current discourse context is alluded to using here. Pragmatically, the construction serves to turn accusatory insults around on the original communicative party by morally differentiating and distancing the user from the original insult, as well as the logic that led the original communicator to use this insult. In essence, this construction acts as a type of meta-discursive contestation over how racist or other labels have been previously used. At the same time, the communicator conveys their own assessment that the original accuser fills this role, the racist, instead, thereby asserting their own moral authority on the rules for attributing the label. On one level, then, this construction furthers semasiological variation through its speech act function as a type of meta-discursive contestation. On another, its use presupposes particular ideological positions about racism, and thus should also be subject to variation due to its viewpointed construal of racism. Specifically, the construction's use with racist construes the label as an offensive insult, labeling a person as essentially racist, a moral outcast, in line with Hodge's characterization of hunting for racists. This focuses on interpersonal discourse as the relevant context with which to recognize racism in action, or in ignoring socio-historical context and institutional racist projects. Furthermore, it ideologically raises complex discourses, pushing actors into a binary by assuming that only one out of two individuals or groups is essentially racist, when critical theories understand racism to be infused in institutional systems that most people play a role in recreating. In line with the small association I found in my previous sample, I predicted that the use of this construction with racist would be associated with MAGA tweeters and dissociated with BLM tweeters. Here's the contingency table associated with my analysis. In this time period, the number of tweeters with MAGA in their profiles was much larger than those with Black Lives Matter in their user profiles. However, the association here confirmed my hypothesis. Only 15 BLM tweeters used this construction with racist. The odds that a tweeter used the turning the insult construction with racist is about 12 times more likely for MAGA tweeters than for BLM tweeters. Prototypically, MAGA tweeters used this linguistic pattern in a particular type of scenario: to accuse liberals, often people of color, who have accused white conservatives of racism, of being racist themselves. In turning the accusations of racism back toward the accusers, MAGA tweeters often drew on the original accusations of racism themselves as evidence that the original accuser is the racist. In doing so, they equated racism with talking about race and racism, which they believe is no longer a salient phenomenon in modern society. This is in line with the folk theory of racism, in which racism is primarily a thing of the past. In addition, white people can be the victims of the few racist insults that still exist in the modern era. For example, the first tweeter here says about AOC, "I think she's the racist with all her talk about white supremacy and racism." In this next tweet, the tweeter says of Representative Hank Johnson, "Targeting white Americans is an insult. Maybe you are the racist." As Eckert and many others have argued, the social meanings of linguistic variants stem from the larger discourses they are used within. Furthermore, Beltrama and Casasanto have connected the pragmatic correlates and presuppositions associated with semantic representations to social meaning, also by virtue of the discourses and activities such pragmatic correlates are associated with. This plays out in the current data with racist. Through the use in these discourses that align with the pragmatic correlates of the turning the insult construction, it appears that this particular construal of racist has accrued a specific social meaning, which I will demonstrate on the next slide. It has become associated with a white and/or conservative persona. For example, in this example in the current corpus, we have everybody scratch off doesn't have a racist bone in her body on your white lady bingo card. Oh, and a bonus, you're the real racist square. Here, you're the racist is ideologically connected with white lady. A white and/or conservative persona can also be seen in these additional tweets, which I searched for separately. Many of these tweets connect the construction to a conservative persona in addition to a white one. In turn, the data in this corpus also suggests that MAGA tweeters associate social meaning with the way liberals use the word racist differently than they do. Specifically, many MAGA tweeters in the current corpus reference the frequency with which liberals, or specifically Black liberals, use the word racist. Oh my God, the word racist is the only word liberals know. In this second one, these Black liberals think they can constantly accuse and play victim of racism by someone. Black Democrats are the racists. And lastly, of course, they themselves are the true racists and they prove it daily. Liberals do this constantly. Also, many MAGA tweeters used the words yell, shout, or cry to discuss liberals' accusations of racism against conservatives. As usual for attacks from the left, the ones yelling racist were the actual racist. In the second tweet here, the word cry is used. And lastly, the ones who shout the loudest that we are the racist are the racist. Thus, these tweets show that conservatives also have particular ideologies about how liberals use the word racist differently than they do, associating frequent and also shrill or loud accusations of racism with a liberal figure of personhood. They then contest these uses that they ideologically depict through the use of the turning the insult construction, articulating that liberals are using racist the wrong way, and thus reasserting their moral superiority in their own use of the word. Here we see explicit meta-commentary on the meaning of racist, in which MAGA tweeters argue that liberals have made the word meaningless. In this presentation, I have suggested that although most variationist research examines two different ways to say the same thing, equal profit can be drawn from the study of variation in the meaning associated with a single form, semasiological variation. Although meaning is subjective and cannot be measured directly, cognitive linguists have demonstrated that semantic meaning can be operationalized in terms of contextual factors that reveal patterns in conceptual structure. Syntactic constructions can be used to construe concepts such as racist in ideological ways. Here I have operationalized variation in the meaning of racist by measuring variation in the word's use with what I have called the turning the insult construction. This construction presupposes that only one out of two individuals or groups in a discourse space is an essential racist, drawing on ideologies associated with the folk theory of white racism. These presuppositions conflict with the way MAGA tweeters characterize liberals and progressives as using racist to describe everything. Furthermore, these different ways of using this one word are associated with different social meanings. MAGA tweeters associate frequent, crying, yelling, or shouting racist with a liberal persona, while others associate the turning the insult construction with racist with a conservative persona. As I have argued, the type of markedness involved in semasiological variation is associated not with an ideological choice between two forms that mean the same thing, but an ideological choice between two different ways to use the same form. Or in other words, the choice to use the same word in different syntactic and situational contexts. This work thus adds on to the work at the semantics, pragmatics, and social meaning interface by countering the general position that semantic meaning does not vary, and by demonstrating that variation in use and meaning can be connected to social identity construction, just as variation in form can. Thank you. And here are my references.